Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video on The Flash. Today we're going to be talking about an article from Flash TV News on potentially The Flash continuing beyond Season 9. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV videos later this year. Okay, so The Flash has been finished for a couple weeks now. Obviously, we still have Superman Lois on right now, so everything feels like kind of okay, and maybe you're expecting The Flash to come back for more episodes. Well, that's kind of ingrained into our heads, but it's the end of the show, and we've all had to accept that. And obviously, we have to look forward to the future, because we've seen many characters from the past return, whether their shows have ended, they've been cancelled, or, you know, it's just been a long time. Like, who would have ever thought that we would have seen John Wesley Shipp's Flash return, like, 20 years into the future? And with the Arrowverse being as popular as it is, I'm sure there's going to be some way that they're going to be involved in the future of DC at some point. That's just my personal hope, because, you know, they're building the DCEU, and they're also trying to continue doing Elseworld projects over at DC Studios with James Gunn. So I have my hopes, but I'm not going to say anything has been confirmed. But this article is very exciting because there could be a continuation of The Flash after the final episode. It's possible. And so I'm going to read from Flash TV News right now and give you my thoughts. Before he landed on The Flash, showrunner Eric Wallace had been involved with Big Finish Productions' audio continuations of classic gothic TV soap TV show Dark Shadows, having written or co-written 3 stories for the studio. Stories like the ones told by Big Finish can keep a franchise alive. They were the leading source of new Doctor Who stories during the wilderness years between the 1990s and 2005, when there wasn't much Doctor Who on TV. Those of you English Doctor Who fans, you know what he's talking about here. But when we spoke to Eric Wallace prior to the launch of The Flash Season 9 earlier this year, we asked him if he had any interest in writing Flash audio adventures one day. Eric Wallace replied to Flash TV News, "Yes, I would love to. Not immediately. Give me a year off. I need a break, but I would love to write a Flash audio adventure at some point in the future to tell the stories that I wasn't able to tell during this particular moment." So that is Eric Wallace, the showrunner of The Flash's answer. I think that's exactly what you expect when you get asked, would you consider going back to The Flash or going back to a project that has just finished? Obviously they need some time off. Same thing goes for Grant. Like, you don't expect them to come back like in a year. I mean, it took Stephen Amell like 3 years to come back as Arrow, but he eventually did come back. Obviously it's a different situation now because we don't know the future of the Arrowverse. Is it going to be much more beyond Superman, Lois and Gotham Knights, or is that going to be the end of it? And potentially if we see them ever again, it will be in the DCU. But even Grant Gustin gave a similar answer when asked by, I think it was EW, in an interview, where he said that he would like to come back at some point if someone gave him a really good pitch, you know, for like a miniseries or a film or something. Of course he would be down to come back because, you know, he has that strong connection to the character. He's played the character for nearly 10 years. And same thing goes for Stephen Amell. We've heard him quite a lot actually say he would be down to come back for like a mini Arrowverse series, you know, that is just like a one-off show about Arrow, and it would just be like one season and done, or like a Arrowverse film. That's something that he's been teasing for a while. So I think if that's ever the case, and Eric Wallace or any of the other past Arrowverse showrunners or Greg Berlanti ever want to get back into the Arrowverse, because obviously it's been a big success for Berlanti Productions and Warner Brothers and everything, I think, you know, give it some time and maybe we're going to get back to it, which would be obviously super awesome because we all love the Arrowverse. And so I like Eric Wallace's answer. Yes, he needs a break, but he would love to write some sort of future continuation of the show so he's able to tell the stories that he wasn't able to tell during the TV show whilst it was on. Obviously, we've heard many reports of Eric Wallace having particular ideas for season 10, if he were to get to season 10, that he would have loved to tell, but obviously in the case of The Flash, it just ended with season 9 because that's where they came to an agreement with Grant Gustin, the network and everything. And so season 9 had 13 episodes ultimately, and season 10 wasn't going to be a thing, but Eric Wallace has been teasing what could have happened if there were a season 10, and I really get the impression that Eric Wallace is really attached to The Flash, and you know, he's been involved for many years now, so it makes sense that he would like to continue it, whether it's in audio form or comic book form. We've seen the continuation of Nicole Maines' Nia Now. I think that's a big reason why she actually showed up in The Flash, because she's been, you know, a continual presence in the Arrowverse despite not being on TV. She was just continuing to make content that is related to the Arrowverse, and it's been really great. So I would love to see some sort of continuation, as I said, whether it's comic book form or in an audio adventure. Obviously the audio adventure would be great if you could bring back Grant Gustin. I think everyone would be so hyped about that. Obviously it would be a shame to not have the visuals to go alongside that, because we're so used to that, but it would still be great to have like a continuation in some form or the other. So the final bit in this article, they actually reference that EW interview with Grant Gustin in regards to the future of The Flash beyond the final episode. He says, "I think regardless of if I put the suit on again or not, and I love this, I'll be associated with this character for the rest of my life. So if anybody wants to call me about The Flash, I will take that phone call and I will hear them out," says Grant Gustin. So for now, season 9 is the end of The Flash as we know it, but it might not be the end after all. Let's just hope there is some sort of interest and maybe someone pitches a really interesting Flash project to Grant in the future. I'm looking at you, James Gunn, and those in control over at DC, because it would be amazing if they brought him back, especially considering how things have gone with their Flash in the DCEU. Obviously there's a lot of controversy around Ezra, and so people have been saying it's a no-brainer, like just bring in Grant Gustin if you don't want to do Ezra Miller, because he's just been so good and he's been proven for literally 10 years of playing the same character. So let's move on to the second part of this video. We have another interview. This is from Deadline, something that I wanted to go over for a while now since The Flash ended. This interview came out after it came out. It's all about Grant Gustin saying goodbye to the TV series. So I'm going to go over a couple of questions that they ask, which I think are interesting, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on Grant Gustin's answers. So the first question is, so now that you've had a bit of distance from the production, how are you feeling about the way the story wraps up? Grant Gustin says, "I felt good in general about the last few episodes and some of the story points that we were able to hit. I loved the episode that I believed the one Eric Wallace directed, where we put a bow on the Reverse Flash storyline and visited the night Barry's mum was murdered again and he got to spend all the time with his parents one last time. I really enjoyed that episode and I like where we leave them all. I've been talking a lot about his family. The show always was about family, and we finished it off by Barry and Iris bringing Nora into the world and into the family and going together into the future. And we saw that glimpse into 2049 and the team in the future being still together, protecting the city. So I think it was just a good testament and indication of what the show had always been, and that there was a lot of hope on the horizon as we wrapped up the last couple of episodes. So I have to agree with Grant. I think that was my favorite episode in the final season, which was the episode where we wrapped up the Reverse Flash storyline. I felt like that was the perfect episode. That was what I was expecting. I knew this had to happen, and it finally did, and Eric Wallace did a really, really good job with bringing things full circle, and that will remain one of the most memorable episodes of the final season, and maybe even of the show, because Barry was put into the shoes of that original Flash. So yeah, let's move on to the next question. From Deadline, there were so many characters from the Arrowverse who returned for the final season, including Tom Cavanaugh's Reverse Flash. What did it mean to you to reunite with all of them one last time? Grant says, "It was great. That was for sure one of the things that every time the script came out I was most excited about." I would think the whole cast would say the same. We knew going into this that it was our last season, which made it, I think, a lot easier for us to enjoy every day and every scene in a different kind of way than we have in the past, than to get to reconnect with people that we hadn't been around for a few years, and knowing that they were coming in, that this is going to be their last episode. You know, we got the picture wrap, a lot of guest stars when they would come back, and leads from other series. one of the most fun parts of the 9 years on the show is really the talented guest stars we all got to work with, so it was really fun to bring back old friends and do it one more time. Obviously, this was a memorable part of the final season that we were all looking forward to. We knew there would be a bunch of people coming back. Obviously, they didn't get everyone that they wanted back, but we got a good chunk of people. Obviously, Stephen Amell returned as Green Arrow. That was probably the most prominent. Then you had Reverse Flash, you had all the other species from the past coming back for one last final showdown. We were missing a few familiar faces from the Flash. Obviously, the most prominent one was Carlos Valdez as Cisco, and in terms of the Arrowverse, I guess it was Melissa Benoist not being there as Supergirl, considering that Steven returned as Arrow. But nevertheless, we had some amazing faces show up for the final season. Let's go into the final 2 questions that we're going to be going over. So Deadline says, the Arrowverse has spanned so many years and has such a large fan base now. When you found out that this was the final season, was there anything in particular you wanted to leave the audience with? Did you have any goals for the final season? Gustin says, not in that sense necessarily. I mean, when it comes to scripts, for the most part, I don't really insert myself too much. Not a writer. I've come to protect my character in certain ways and will have dialogue with writers and the showrunner. We've had, when the scripts come in, I'm like, hey, can I adjust this in this way? Can I say this? But for the most part, I accepted what my material was for that episode. So going into the season, I didn't really try to expect anything specific story-wise. I kind of approached it in the same way I always have, which is roll with the punches and then do the best that I can to make it work for me. When it comes to the greater Arrowverse or just the reach of the show, it's something that I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about while I was making it, because I think I would have been overwhelming for me on a day-to-day basis while I was actually trying to do the work. And I totally understand that. Like, there is so much going on. Only fans and showrunners and writers can really take a grasp of that, because being an actor, I guess you just got to focus on what you're doing. But even as we were doing the last season, I knew it was all wrapping up, which was obviously really important to me and really special to me. But I was like, one day at a time, one scene at a time, do the work that's in front of me, and everything will just work out the way it needs to if I stay focused on the work. I just never really allowed myself to get into the big picture when it came to the show. Okay, the final question from Deadline is, what has been your favorite part about developing the character over 9 seasons? Gustin says, I think just growing up with him. Going in, I wanted to be perfect, which I was never going to be. I wanted everyone to be pleased. I wanted to be pleased with myself, and I was setting, I think, impossible standards to myself and putting too much pressure on myself. I think I realized early on that a lot of my life and his life and the experiences were parallel in a lot of ways. I got to grow up with the character. Another thing that I've spoken about recently, it's a cliche, but it is true. When you're doing a show for such a long time and you're doing it for so many months out of the year, and you're working for such long days in your formative years of your life, like all of my 20s and then my early 30s, get lost where you begin and the character ends. There's some days where it feels like one. As the show ended, he's starting the family in the present day, and now, I mean, my only priority and goal is to be a good father and a good husband, and I get to start this next chapter of my life with my family. So it's just really special to me that I got to become an adult with Barry, and now we get to both step into these next chapters of our lives with our families. So I think this is really important actually, because it's true. Like, Grant started The Flash when he was early 20s, and he's been doing it for nearly 10 years. And it's true that those are formative years, and it's definitely had as big of an impact on himself as it has to fans that have grown up with the character and grown up with the show. So big up to Grant. He's done a great job over the last 9 seasons of The Flash. I really hope to see him again sometime in the future. But for now, that pretty much does it for this video. So if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video. But for now, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see red.